Most men, the second a woman goes quiet on them, do the one thing that guarantees she never comes back. Not because they're bad people, not because they don't care, but because everything they instinctively want to do in that moment is exactly wrong. And here's what nobody tells you: a woman going quiet is not always the end. Sometimes it's actually a turning point. The difference between the men who lose her completely and the men who come out of it stronger isn't luck. It isn't looks. It's one specific thing they do. Or more importantly, one specific thing they don't do. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that is. But first, let me tell you what the wrong move looks like. Because chances are you've already done it. And chances are it cost you more than you realized. Let's talk about silence. Not the comfortable kind, the other kind. The kind where someone who was texting you every day suddenly isn't. The kind where responses go from paragraphs to one word to nothing at all. The kind that sits in your chest at 2 in the morning and refuses to let you sleep. That specific silence, the one coming from a woman you actually care about, does something interesting to the male brain. Research from the University of California found that social rejection and physical pain activate overlapping regions in the brain. So when she goes quiet, it doesn't just feel bad emotionally, it registers neurologically as something close to actual pain, which explains why the response is so often irrational. Pain makes people act desperately, and desperation, as we're about to establish, is the single fastest way to make a bad situation irreversible. Here's what most men do the moment she goes quiet. They text again, then again. They send the, "Hey, everything okay?" message, then the, "I feel like something's off" message. Then the slightly longer message that starts with, "Look, I just want to understand what happened." And with every single message, they believe they're fixing it. They're not. They're burying it. A study from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that excessive contact after perceived withdrawal is consistently rated by women as the behavior most likely to permanently damage their interest, not reduce it. Permanently damage it. And yet it's the default response for most men because it feels like doing something is better than doing nothing. It isn't. And this video is going to explain exactly why and what to do instead. There are 4 stages to handling this correctly. Most men don't make it past stage 1, and the ones who do almost always stumble on stage 3, which is the one we'll spend the most time on today because it's the one that actually determines the outcome. Stay with me because the thing I'm going to tell you about stage 2 is going to sound completely backwards, and that's exactly why it works. Before anything else, this needs to be said clearly. A woman going quiet is not one thing. It is not a single behavior with a single meaning. And treating it like one, assuming you know what it means without actually knowing, is mistake number 0, the one that happens before all the other mistakes. There are roughly 4 reasons a woman pulls back and goes quiet. And the correct response to each one is different. Getting them mixed up is how men make a recoverable situation unrecoverable. The first reason is emotional overwhelm. Not negative overwhelm, sometimes positive. When things are moving fast, when feelings are getting intense, some women pull back not because they're losing interest, but because they're trying to regulate. They need space to process what they're feeling before they can show up present and honest. This kind of quiet is temporary and self-resolving. The worst thing a man can do here is fill the silence with anxiety. She just needs a moment. The man who gives her that moment without making it a crisis, she comes back more certain than before she left. The second reason is a test. And before anyone rolls their eyes, hear this out. Attachment psychology has documented what's called protest behavior, actions taken subconsciously to gauge how someone responds to emotional distance. It's not always a deliberate, calculated decision. More often, it's an automatic response rooted in attachment style. A woman with anxious attachment tendencies may go quiet specifically to see if he'll chase, because chasing has historically meant caring in her emotional framework. A woman with avoidant tendencies may go quiet because closeness triggered a retreat. These are very different situations, requiring very different responses. Treating both the same way is a guaranteed loss. The third reason is genuine disinterest or dissatisfaction. She's pulling back because something shifted, something he did or didn't do, something she realized, something that changed how she sees the situation. This is the one men fear most, so they respond to all four reasons as if it's this one, which ironically turns the other three into this one. And the fourth reason, and this one is genuinely underestimated, is that she's just busy, stressed, distracted by her own life. Not everything is about the dynamic between two people. Sometimes a woman goes quiet because her boss is impossible, her family is complicated, and she hasn't had 5 consecutive minutes to herself all week. The man who makes her silence about him in this scenario just created a problem where there wasn't one. So before any response strategy, the first requirement is honest assessment. What's actually happening here? Because the answer to that question changes everything that comes after. This is the part that's going to sting a little, but it needs to be said. When a man feels the anxiety of a woman going quiet, his nervous system goes into problem-solving mode. And problem-solving mode, when applied to human emotion, almost always overshoots. He starts generating responses, options, things he can say or do that will fix the silence. And the options his brain generates under stress are almost universally the wrong ones. Over-texting is the most obvious, but there are subtler versions that do just as much damage. Sending a completely casual message, "Hey, saw this and thought of you," as a covert way of reopening contact without admitting that's what he's doing. She sees through this immediately, every single time. Women are extraordinarily good at detecting emotional subtext, and a transparent, "I'm pretending this is casual, but I'm actually spiraling" message is worse than an honest one. Then there's the emotional confession approach. The message that's longer than it should be, that starts explaining feelings and asking for clarity and requesting a conversation. This one comes from a real place. The feelings behind it are genuine, but the timing is completely wrong. Sending an emotionally loaded message into silence, into a space where she's already withdrawn, is the conversational equivalent of turning up the volume when someone asks for quiet. It doesn't address the problem. It confirms the fear she may have already been forming about whether this dynamic is emotionally sustainable. Here's what this actually looks like from her side, because that perspective matters enormously. When a woman who has pulled back receives a string of messages or an emotional plea or a "we need to talk" text, her internal response is rarely, "Oh, he cares so much, this is romantic." More often, it is one of two things. Either she feels pressured and retreats further, or she feels a loss of respect so quiet and so specific that even she might not be able to articulate it immediately. But it's there, and it doesn't go away. Psychologist John Gottman, whose research on relationship dynamics is among the most extensive ever conducted, identified what he calls emotional flooding, a state where someone becomes so overwhelmed by interpersonal anxiety that their responses become reactive and counterproductive. Men in this state don't make good decisions. They make fast decisions, and fast decisions made from emotional flooding are almost always regretted. The solution isn't to feel less, it's to act less, at least initially. Here's the thing that sounds backwards. When a woman goes quiet, the most powerful response of the one that changes outcomes most consistently is space. Deliberate, unapologetic, self-respecting space, not the silent treatment. Not cold withdrawal designed to punish, not strategic game playing, genuine space, the kind that comes from a man who has a full life, a sense of self-worth, and enough emotional security to not disintegrate every time someone else's energy shifts. This works for a very specific psychological reason. When someone pulls back and the other person immediately chases, it confirms a power imbalance. It tells her, regardless of whether he intends this, that her withdrawal is the single most important thing happening in his world right now, that she has complete control over his emotional state, and that, counterintuitively, makes her feel less safe, not more. Because people do not feel secure in relationships where the other person has no emotional floor. When he doesn't chase, when the silence is met with calm and his life just continues, it communicates something completely different. It says, "I value this, but I don't require it for basic functioning. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm also not falling apart. And that specific combination of availability without desperation is, according to attachment researchers, one of the most genuinely attractive qualities a person can demonstrate. Now, here's where men usually get this wrong, even when they've understood the theory. They give space, but they give it with an agenda. They go quiet while internally counting the hours. They check obsessively to see if she's viewed a story or come online. They're doing space as a tactic, rather than actually experiencing space as a natural state. And women who are perceptive often feel the difference. There's a texture to manufactured calm that doesn't feel the same as the real thing. The actual work here isn't behavioral, it's internal. It's redirecting genuine attention back to one's own life, the gym, a project, friends, something that creates real energy and real presence that isn't dependent on her response. This isn't a manipulation tool. It's a sanity tool, and it happens to also be the most attractive thing a man can do in this moment. At some point, after genuine space has been given, re-engagement becomes appropriate. And this part matters just as much as everything before it, because this is the second place men most commonly ruin it. The re-engagement message, when it comes, needs to carry one quality above everything else: lightness. Not forced lightness that reads as, "I'm pretending I don't care." Actual, easy, low-stakes lightness, a short message, a genuine observation, something that opens a door without pushing through it. What it must not be is a recap of the silence. No, so I noticed you've been quiet. No, I've been giving you space, but I just wanted to check in. Both of these make the silence the subject of the conversation, which puts the dynamic back into charged territory before anything has had a chance to reset. The goal of the re-engagement message is not to resolve everything. It's to normalize contact again, to make it easy for her to respond without feeling like the response carries enormous weight, to lower the temperature of the whole situation by treating it as if the temperature was never that high. If she responds warmly, great. Keep it easy for a while. Don't immediately try to discuss what happened. Let the reconnection rebuild naturally before introducing anything heavier. If she doesn't respond or responds minimally, this is important, that is information. Not rejection necessarily, but information. And the correct response to information is to receive it clearly, not argue with it. One more message after a non-response is reasonable. 3 more is not. A man who cannot read a clear signal and adjust accordingly isn't demonstrating persistence. He's demonstrating poor emotional intelligence. And that is never the impression to leave. This is the one nobody talks about. But it might be the most important part of this entire video. She comes back. The silence breaks. She responds warmly, maybe explains herself, maybe doesn't. Either way, the dynamic has shifted back toward connection. And at this exact moment, so many men do the one thing that restarts the entire cycle. They bring the anxiety with them. They're so relieved that contact is restored that they immediately overcorrect in the opposite direction, becoming extra attentive, extra communicative, extra available, as if trying to compensate for all the silence at once. And this is a problem because it signals to her that the equilibrium she just returned to is already unstable, that his emotional state is tied directly and entirely to hers, that the calm she just experienced from him was temporary, not actual. What she needs to feel when she comes back is that nothing dramatic happened, that he's the same person, that the foundation didn't crack just because she needed space for a moment. That kind of steadiness, the kind that doesn't get inflated by good contact or destroyed by silence, is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily attractive. Researcher Sue Johnson, founder of emotionally focused therapy and one of the leading voices in attachment science, describes this quality as secure base behavior, the capacity to be reliably present without being emotionally volatile. It's what every person at a deep level is looking for in a partner, and it's demonstrated not in grand gestures but in exactly these small moments. The moments where the natural reaction would be to either panic or overcompensate, and instead, there's just calm. So here's the full picture. When she goes quiet, most men panic. And panic produces the exact behavior, chasing, over-explaining, emotional flooding, that turns a temporary withdrawal into a permanent one. The science is clear on this. The psychology is consistent, and the pattern is almost universal. The men who handle it well don't have some magical quality she can't resist. They have one specific thing: genuine emotional self-regulation. They feel the anxiety, they just don't perform it. They give space not as a tactic, but as an expression of self-respect. They re-engage with lightness when the timing is right. And when she comes back, they stay steady instead of collapsing with relief. None of this is about being emotionally unavailable or detached. It's about being secure enough that her silence doesn't determine your worth. And that security, quiet, consistent, unbothered, is what changes the outcome. Every time. This is the thing most men never learn. And the ones who do, they stop losing people they shouldn't be losing. Now, before you go, there's something you need to know, because here's the thing about everything we just covered. All of it, the space, the re-engagement, the steady calm, only works if you can read what's actually happening with her in the first place. If you're guessing, you're gambling. And most men are guessing every single time. The reason she went quiet in the first place, the reason she pulled back, the reason she sometimes seems interested and then distant, all of that has roots in something that was already happening long before the silence started. She was showing you exactly how she felt. With every small, almost invisible behavior, you just didn't know how to read it yet. And that's exactly what the video that's sitting on your screen right now breaks down completely. It's called 7 Signs She Wants You Bad, but Hopes You Never Notice. It covers every behavioral signal women send when attraction is real but hidden. The body language, the texting patterns, the competitive edge she shows when she thinks you're not watching. If you watch that video after this one, you won't just know how to handle silence. You'll know how to read everything that comes before it. That context is what turns guesswork into clarity. And clarity changes everything. It's right there. Watch it next.